stop wondering if Donald Trump is joking. We should take him at his word. And what he said is that he invites Vladimir Putin to invade any European country that has not paid what he deems to be the appropriate level of funding to NATO, irregardless of the fact that he thinks it's money to the United States, which it's not. So this is a threat, a direct threat to European stability and security, and certainly to American as well. This is an invitation to Vladimir Putin to meddle in our elections. And it is treasonous talk.
Now, the US Senate has approved a $95 billion package of foreign aid, which includes $60 billion for Ukraine after months of political wrangling. But it could still be blocked in the House of Representatives. Biden has been battling to get the bill through with the support of Democratic senators. Republican senators were divided and had previously voted it down, but 22 of them switched sides to approve the legislation, despite criticism from the former President Donald Trump. Well, at the White House tonight, President Joe Biden urged Republicans in the House of Representatives to pass the measure.
We can't walk away now. That's what Putin's betting on. He just flatly said that. Supporting this bill is standing up to Putin. Opposing it is playing into Putin's hands. As I've said before, the stakes in this fight extend far beyond Ukraine. If we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine. And the cost for America and our allies and partners are going to rise. For Republicans in Congress who think they can oppose funding for Ukraine and not be held accountable, history is watching. History is watching. History is watching. Failure to support Ukraine at this critical moment will never be forgotten.
Well, Joel Rubin is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under the Obama administration. He gave me his reaction to the vote to approve the bill.
Well, Carol, there's two major ways to think about this package. First is on the policy, which is that it shows that there is still a large appetite, certainly in the Senate, for American leadership on global affairs, and that this national security supplemental, which is how it's being described, this is the kind of money that we need to be pumping into our allies in Ukraine and Israel, Taiwan, and elsewhere, the Palestinian humanitarian assistance as well, to really show strong leadership. But politically, it's a real daunting challenge because, as you know, and as everybody is witnessing, Donald Trump has sort of put his grip now on the Republican Party, and the House is saying it doesn't even want to touch this. And the sort of MAGA wing of the Republican Party is rebelling at this, especially because it doesn't have any border security language, which, of course, they rejected only a week ago. So that is just to pick you up on that,
Joel. That is the fact that some of those Republicans, senators who were holding up this package were saying that they'd only back it if there was also money to shore up the United States southern border with Mexico.
Well, we have a joke here in Washington. They were for it before they were against it, and now they are showing that to be a truism. They were for this bill with border security measures until they were against it when Donald Trump told them not to be. Those border security measures were stripped out, and lo and behold, the national security foreign policy parts persisted. And so the hypocrisy is just extraordinary. I don't think I've ever seen – I've been working in Washington for a couple of decades now on foreign policy and politics, and I have never seen such a hypocritical turnaround as I've seen on this bill with the Republicans essentially jumping ship from what was their alleged priority and now complaining that it's not in it. It really makes your head spin.
Well, we've heard from President Biden tonight, and he was very critical of Donald Trump, who, as you say, had urged Republican senators to block this bill. I mean, is that just because Donald Trump doesn't want to be spending such huge sums on the war in Ukraine, which looks set to continue for so much longer? He wants to, of course, focus the funding back in the United States.
Oh, if it were only such a nice, innocent explanation like a good policy. It's because Donald Trump is a chaos agent. He wants chaos at the border. He wants chaos globally. He does not want to support American allies, certainly Ukraine in its fight against Russia. And he was very opposed to the border security measures that a union that has the Border Patrol representing that Border Patrol, that union endorsed Donald Trump in the last election. They supported the bill that Trump came out against. They had said it would help secure the border. He didn't want that because that would take away a major argument that he's trying to use in the election to say that Joe Biden is for insecure borders. So it's all politics with Donald Trump. There's no policy on this. And thankfully, enough senators at least are there. And I think there will be a lot of House Republicans, too, if Democrats can find a way to dislodge it and get a vote on the floor despite the Speaker's objections.
Yeah, because just to be clear, this package of funding has still got to be approved by the House of Representatives. I mean, what do we know about what's going to happen there and when it could actually be finally approved?
So, Carol, this is where the arcanity of the legislative process really comes into play. Now, the way this works in short is that the bill is passed the Senate and it's alive through the end of this calendar year. It does not have a deadline tied to it. In the House, they can choose to not take it up. And then Democrats are talking about doing what we call a discharge petition, which is getting a majority of House members to sign a petition saying, put the bill on the floor, even if the Speaker is choosing not to do it. And this Speaker says he won't do it. That would require 3 or 4 courageous Republicans to buck their leadership and sign it. It's possible, but that's the only way. Otherwise, the House will stop it and we will have no bill.
So it's still quite likely that this package might not go through.
There is a serious chance it will not go through, and it's going to take a lot of politics and a lot of pressure and a lot of legislative chicanery to try to dislodge it. But as it stands right now, it is stopped. And now the dynamics go into the House to see what can be done to dislodge it. But as of now, it is not law.
As you've been pointing out, this is all really wrapped up in the wider politics ahead of the presidential election there in the United States. We've had President Biden also reacting to Donald Trump's comments suggesting not only that the United States might not support a NATO ally if that country wasn't spending enough on its own defense, but in fact that he would almost encourage some sort of attack on a NATO ally. I mean, was that a really serious suggestion, do you think?
I try to think that we should stop wondering if Donald Trump is joking. We should take him at his word. And what he said is that he invites Vladimir Putin to invade any European country that has not paid what he deems to be the appropriate level of funding to NATO, irregardless of the fact that he thinks it's money to the United States, which it's not. So this is a threat, a direct threat to European stability and security, and certainly to American as well. This is an invitation to Vladimir Putin to meddle in our elections, and it is treasonous talk. And it's unfortunate that we've seen a lot of Republicans now essentially say, he didn't mean it, he didn't mean it. I take Donald Trump at his word. I think he meant it. And I think it's what's going to be on the table for the American people to decide in November about what future we want for American global leadership. Do we want to honor our commitments and our allies, or do we want to walk away from them and empower our enemies?
There's a huge amount of concern here in the UK and indeed in other European capitals about those remarks and about what a future Trump White House, and he does appear to be ahead in the polls, what that could mean for US support for NATO and indeed its very membership of NATO. Is this really such a big issue there in the United States, though, or do you think that really Donald Trump is touching a nerve with voters when he does try to focus on that MAGA, Make America Great Again message?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, there is a portion of the American electorate and the body politic that does not like foreign aid, does not want to support the war in Ukraine and the Ukrainians defending their own country. But overall sentiment in the United States is supportive of that kind of defense and is supportive of America's role in the world. But what has happened is one political party, the Republican Party, has been captured by the extreme isolationism of the MAGA movement. And Donald Trump, because he is going to be the presidential candidate, that means that all the Republicans in Congress who otherwise would like to be more global in their outlook are afraid to cross him, and they're going to be more afraid as each day passes. So that's why I'm worried about the supplemental funding we're describing, because each day later, that is one day closer to the general election and one less day likely that there's a likelihood that they will compromise because they don't want to undermine their own nominee in November.
Just finally, once again, we saw President Biden deliver those remarks about the passing of this package, but walking away before taking questions from the media. And this, of course, is after that devastating report that suggested that he couldn't even remember when he was vice president, or indeed the date when his son died. He has appeared confused. He has got muddled up as to who's the leader of which country. I mean, how much concern is there within Democratic ranks as to whether Joe Biden really should be fighting for another term in the White House?
Well, if there's concern, there's no alternative that's been presented by the Democratic Party or the Democratic voters. I think that the Democrats, we're behind Joe Biden. Without a doubt, there are verbal gaffes. But, he was exonerated in the special counsel report, whereas Donald Trump was recommended for indictment. And what Donald Trump says in public about NATO should scare people a lot more than President Biden confusing Mexico and Egypt after a full day of negotiations. So I think these verbal gaffes are what we get with Joe Biden, but what we're also getting is very strong leadership and an effective policy program. And that's why he's not being challenged for this nomination coming up. And Democrats are bullish on him. But the case has to be made, of course, to the whole country that he's up for the job, just as he was for the last several years.
Well, that was Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under the Obama administration, speaking to me just a little earlier.